You're watching Daybreak Asia, coming to you live from New York and Sydney. Our next guest says unrealised losses in the Chinese financial system are likely trillions of dollars worth, and that savers will eventually take the hit. For more analysis, let's bring in independent economist Andy Xie. Andy, great to have you with us. I feel like we've been talking about this same story in different ways over the past, decade or so. There's always this great big rolling ball of debt, of losses when it comes to the Chinese economy, and the question is always, where does that land? And you say ordinary households will eventually have to bear the brunt.
Yeah, I think it's like other East Asian countries like Japan, and the countries have China has a very high savings rate and also fixed exchange rate. So it's kind of you can pass the cost on to savers through inflation because the people really have nowhere to go.
And therein lies the problem, right? Because when you've got a closed system, there's very limited options in terms of where and how households can generate wealth. So what does that mean for wealth creation in China when the property market is losing confidence, when the equity market is losing confidence, and where there are capital controls? So what else can they do?
Well, I think that you look at the experience of Japan. The process was about developing the country, building up the country. So the money really, one way or another, has to go to where the government wants it to. Like now, the government wants to build these big infrastructure projects to boost both the economy and the competitiveness. And these big projects are not going to have high returns. So overall, you look at the economy, it's just you are not going to have high returns. So from time to time, you have financial bubbles that give you high returns, but eventually everything comes back to land on the ground. And I think people in China cannot get very rich. I think that probably is okay with the government. Actually, the government is happy with it.
And of course, there's been more uncertainty given the regulatory crackdown that we've seen across China as well. Breaking right now, we heard from Alibaba that they will be applying for primary stock listing in Hong Kong. A dual primary, of course, they have the stock listed at the NYSE as well. What are the implications of this for the financial markets?
Well, I think that there will be supply issue. I think if the stock is already listed over there, it's just there will be more supply. And the government, the financial decoupling between the United States and China is inevitable. And the Chinese government is doing the first, just to avoid the shock that would come eventually. So I think the overall for the market, I think it's bearish. It's oversupply.
Do you see more of these moves coming for other Chinese companies as well?
I think that overall, especially tech companies, all need to delist. That's my view. The Chinese government has decided that decoupling is inevitable. Why don't we do it now?
Andy, what does this mean for Ant Financial? Because it feels like the trend towards dual listings, like the coming home, is perhaps an effort by some of these giants that have been in the bad books, that have been suffering under the regulatory crackdown, to try and align themselves closer to what the party wants.
Oh, I think that now they understand that, but it's not their choice to make. I think that the Chinese government has been asserting control over finance, over capital markets, and they think that these guys are listed in New York, and it's very hard to understand what they're doing over there. It's not good for the government. So there are a lot of reasons for this to happen. They must come in. And they must obey the Chinese government.
Just yesterday, we were talking about this big story on the Bloomberg about youth unemployment and the really falling expectations from young people, the 15 million young people unemployed. How big of a concern is the broader state of the Chinese economy when it comes to, of course, the Party Congress that we have later this year?
The economy depends on exports. Exports are still rising at a double-digit rate. Such a high base of $3.5 trillion US. And I think that the domestic demand is pretty sluggish because of a zero COVID policy. That's pretty obvious. And also for youth unemployment, it's really about expectation. China has a labor shortage because of the labor force is shrinking. I think the issue is that a lot of graduates were getting high salaries in bubbles like a shadow banking system or this internet sector. Now these areas have really come back to earth. So that's why I think a lot of people are disappointed. They keep searching for high salaries. They are just not there.
Andy, we're looking ahead to the Politburo meeting, which is expected to take place at the end of the month. What are your expectations in terms of economic and stimulus policy? What options remain to policymakers, given that there are so many elements to the slowdown that are structural and perhaps can't be addressed productively by the usual playbooks?
Yeah, I think I don't think the government will do a lot. They will do some. I think there is a general acceptance of slow growth in the coming years. So it's not like the government wants to do everything possible to achieve high growth like we saw before. What I see is these big infrastructure projects like a regional integration. The cities, the small cities that don't have a lot of demand for properties, they're trying to integrate these cities to the tier 1 cities. So hopefully that it will boost the property demand, also boost the efficiency. So I think that's a good idea in my view, even though it cannot achieve all its purposes. Then there is the case for tidying up the property sector. All these buildings are not unfinished. Pump some money there to finish them, so we don't have waste. Other than that, I don't see a lot more to come.
And it's independent economists there on the outlook for the Chinese economy. Thank you.